Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Book Leads Impactful Books for Life and Leadership. I'm your series host and leadership performance coach, John Jaramillo. This podcast series is about me getting to the books that have impacted people in my network, friends, collaborators, colleagues. I want to get to those great leads on books that have impacted who they are as a business person, as a worker, in their personal life, as a mother, sister, brother, what have you. All those lessons kind of transfer over from one world to the next. So the three types of books that I cover here, it falls into three categories. The first category is when they are schooling me on a book that I haven't read. A second category is when we're covering a book together that we both read, whether for this specific episode or we've read it in our previous lives. And then the third category is when I have authors and or publishers that are trying to get the messages out there, the message out there for their books. So in this particular episode, I'm going to have the author with me. And my guest in this episode is Brad Ritter. And first and foremost, I love when people point this out, Brad. First and foremost, as I read your bio, Brad is a husband, father, brother, son, and friend. Family is number one to Brad. He enjoys training hard, endurance events, the beach, fishing, shooting, and food. Professionally, he's held various positions in the medical device, higher education, publishing, and specialty print industries. After graduating from Kokoro Camp in 2015, he wanted to find a way to serve others and help people take control of their lives and get unstuck. He accomplishes this through a proven system that focuses on your physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and warrior spirit. His job is to help you achieve a goal and produce a certain result. He will hold you accountable as well as celebrate your success. What Brad teaches is a lifestyle. It won't be easy, but it'll be worth it. It's for anyone who despises mediocrity and is willing to do the daily work. If you're ready to step into courage, focus on others, and train relentlessly, then you have found the right place. And I was lucky enough where I met Brad through this series. He reached out, obviously, to discuss this great message that he has in his book, which we'll get into in a couple minutes. So I'm lucky enough again that this network keeps expanding based on me just trying to collect these great conversations with great guests about the books that they've read or that they've put out and the great messages that they're sharing. So Brad, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Yeah, absolutely, John. My pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show.
I read through your bio and it's amazing because of the resilience and the grit, as you'll discuss, that we need in these trying times of the pandemic. Um, and I think grit was picking up the idea of grit was picking up even before that. You know, it was more out there in the development space a couple years before the pandemic itself. So I think all of this is so timely, especially with the challenges of the pandemic. Obviously, as you know, the pandemic has exacerbated everything, the need for everything, the need to move forward, to stay resilient, to build your grit. Companies have to pull the trigger on projects that they were waiting on. People have to pull the trigger on development that they want to do for themselves. The urgency in life has kind of kicked up because of this pandemic. So this message of your work and what you want to try to do with people and in helping them is just very timely and needed more now than ever. I mean, in my lifetime.
hmm Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This notion of grit, which is what my book's about. It's nothing new. It's been around for a long time, and yeah, it existed way before the pandemic. But sometimes these big events that happen, either in your life or to the world, in this case, they're great accelerators of change. Great accelerators of change, and I find that those people, those units, those organizations that have the best foundations already in place thrive in those situations. When there's holes in that foundation, man, you get exposed.
Yeah.
You get exposed to what you really are, and you either sort of adapt and roll with the punches, or you become like Sears and you're
Yeah.
gone. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly. Where you don't take that opportunity to innovate, even if it's at the individual level, you fold. I mean, I think we've all been there in our lives where before we get to that point where we realize there's more in control than we thought we could, we come to that realization that we're empowered enough to really make some kind of change. But before we get to that point, it's easily discerned you can see how quickly we typically would fold. We said these are the circumstances, these were the cards that we were dealt, and that's it. That's all we have. But when you get to that point where you realize you can control a little more than you thought you could, it's amazing. It's like a rebirth.
Yeah, 100%, and it's a great feeling, and that can help propel you to whatever you want to do.
So building off your bio, who are you today, Brad? What does the work look like kind of day in, day out that you provide for the people that you work with, for the clients that you help and guide through this process?
Yeah, so I'm still the same guy. How you started that little bio is I am very much a family man. And that at the heart is what drives me. Everything I do, whether it's projects I take on or new ventures, things like that. It involves every decision involves my family, my wife, my kids, all that good stuff. And then as far as the work I do, I'm sort of like Batman in a way. So I do have a day job. I have a W-2 job. I work for this awesome company doing specialty print, pressure sensitive labels, IFUs. I don't want to bore your listeners, but I get to do that, and it's a lot of fun. I get to work with my dad actually, which is a blast. And he's getting ready to retire, and I'll be taking over his account. So that's just been a joy. Been very lucky to do that. And then so that's sort of the day job, and then my night job, if you will, is coaching and writing. And I feel like coaching is my purpose. I like to say that my purpose is to master myself so I can serve others through teaching, coaching, and facilitation. And I want to pass on the lessons that I've learned, those hard lessons, to other folks, other individuals, other groups, other companies. So yeah, that's the dichotomy that I'm in.
I mean, that's a good one though. I mean, yeah, you know, I'm kind of in the same boat where I do have that day job, and it's great when people realize that I have a day job. They're like, "I didn't know you had this day
Hmm.
job," because what they see on social media is like the coaching and the writing and the speaking and all that. Um, and they're like, "How do you have the time for? How do you have the time for that? For all that? For your day job? You have a family, you have those responsibilities, and then you're putting out so much. You're sharing so much with people." And I mean, how do you describe that, Brad? I mean, for me, it's just kind of like you said, coaching is your calling. So
Hmm.
if you have that kind of calling, I mean, you come up with that energy in any way that you can. How does that work for you?
It's interesting because yeah, the two are separate, but I'm a believer that how you are at work should be kind of how you show up in your family and vice versa. So they
Mhm.
don't really separate. In fact, they help one another. The
Yes.
more I dig into coaching, the more I work with clients, and it's the clients that are really teaching me along the ways. Those lessons appear in the W-2 job with how I handle situations, how I'm working with customers, things of that nature. And yeah, it can be hard. And you're going to have seasons where, you're super busy, maybe with the day job, not as busy with the like passion job or the side job. And then maybe that gets flipped around. But I've got a great team around me. And if I didn't have a great team, none of this would be possible. So I'm talking, this is outside of the family. So I got a great team at my W-2 job that I work with. Um, Shout out to Louise out there, who's my right hand lady. All things that I need with that, and then within School of Grit, I've got a head coach, Javier. He's my guy, and helps me run the call teams. And then Courtney, who's my assistant, and then my wife's our director of fun. I came up with that title, so it's definitely a team
That's
effort,
awesome.
man. You can't. That's one of the big things I learned at Kokoro Camp, which I'm sure we'll get to. But it shows up every day is that you can't do everything. You just
Yeah.
can't. There's not enough time. So so then you it starts to be in, okay, who can I get to help me out? And a lot of times you just got to ask. Don't be
Yeah.
afraid to ask, or check your ego at the door, and allow someone in who can help you, who can off fill some of those tasks that yeah they're important, but I want to be focused on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing when you do need help of some sort. I think as you get older, as you mature, you realize that there are people out because you would do it yourself if somebody asked you for help and you could do it.
Yep.
But it's amazing how many times you may ask for help, just assistance, and people will help however they can. I mean, yes, it's a game of numbers. Some people won't, but it's amazing how oftentimes and more times than not, you'll have somebody that just wants to share their expertise, or if
Yep.
you need a mentor, if you need guidance, if you need a sounding board, people are willing to open up and help with their knowledge. And I think a lot of people don't get asked. I think we're leaving a lot of resources on the table by not asking for help of others. And I'm guilty of that. I try to take things on myself, and it's tough for me to ask for help. It's a lesson that I'm learning slowly, but it's amazing how much you can depend on people, and looking for that right tribe for you, that right mix of resources and just people to depend on.
Yep. It's kind of like if you ever rescue a pet from an animal shelter, they say, well, you're not just rescuing that pet, you're actually saving two, because that allows another pet to come into its place. It's kind of like that, I feel, with asking for help is, yes, you're going to be the recipient of that, but that person that's helping you, it's good for them. They're like,
Yeah.
hey, cool, I get to help so and so out, and that helps them further hone their skills or
Yes,
achieve
absolutely.
mastery and whatever it is. So it's an all around good thing.
Absolutely. So, Brad, to understand how you ended up here, what is it? Can you give me a sense of what put you on this path when you were younger, whether it was school, your family, friends, chance encounter? We don't have to go year by year, but what was it that triggered the path that kind of led you here? What did your career look like that culminated in the work that you're doing today?
Yeah, chance encounter is what I would say. My background is nothing special at all. You listen to motivational speakers or see videos on YouTube, and
Hmm.
some of these folks just have just traumatic life experience. Man, I didn't really have that. Like I had a great upbringing. I'm the oldest of four children. My parents are still married. We were middle class. We weren't rich by any means, but I didn't have to worry about having a roof over my head, or if I was going to eat dinner that
Yeah.
particular night. We were always provided for. We got to go on vacation. I seemed to make friends fairly easy. I did okay in school. I didn't really have to apply myself. I could kind of just get by,
Yeah.
so to speak, and that works. That can work for so long. And then I got to this point in my mid 30s. So I'm 42. I'll be 43 this year. But I was about 34 at the time, and had this two chance encounters, I guess you would say. One was with myself. I was getting ready for work, and a lot of we all have these voices in our heads. These they speak to us sometimes, and whether it comes from God or whatever you believe in, that's up to you. But I'm just a huge believer. You need to listen. You need to
Yeah.
listen to that voice in your head, and that voice was just telling me like, hey, you're doing good, but you're meant for bigger things. Are you sure this is what you need to be doing with the rest of your life? That sort of thing. I mean, those deep conversations. And historically, I would just dismiss them and go about my day and go to work, and that was it. I don't know why. Just this particular time, I decided to listen to it. I was home alone, so I work out of my house. Wife and kids were already at school, and like passion, purpose. Those were like the words that were popping through my head, and I thought, man, I need to dig into this whole passion thing. Like, find your passion. Like that seemed to be like the big buzzword for me back in my
Yeah.
early 30s. So I went on to the internet and typed in passion, and there was like 27 million hits, and I spent like the next hour or two just reading blogs and not really getting anywhere close to where I needed to be. It was probably analysis paralysis. And I thought, okay, well, that was a good shot. And I thought, well, I like video, and at the time, at least for me, I wasn't using YouTube nearly as much as I am now.
Yeah.
But I went on YouTube and typed in passion, and this awesome TED talk came up, man. Chance Encounter, number two. This TED talk literally helped change my life. And it was delivered by a author named Angela Duckworth, and she wrote a
Hmm.
book called Grit.
Yep.
Are you familiar with that book? See, you got it.
Where is
Got one
it?
of those.
It's
One of those.
around here somewhere. It's
Yeah,
around here
yeah,
somewhere. There it
yeah.
is. There it is.
Great book.
Yeah.
Right, great book. So I'm looking at her TED talk. It's 6 minutes, and she goes on to say about how grit is like the number one indicator and predictor of success in life, and just it's all her different studies with West Point
Hmm.
graduates, cutthroat sales industries, inner city teachers, like what's going to keep them around next year. It boiled down to grit. and
Yeah.
grit could be grown. And she gave this test that you could take, a grit scale, I think she called it. You can still take
Hmm.
it today. It's 10 questions, super easy. And man, I took that test, and out of a score of 1 through 5, 5 being like, a paragon of grit, 0 having little or no grit, I scored like a 2.2, which was like super low. And it said that I was grittier than, I don't know, 10% of the sample population that took it. And I'm a competitive guy by nature, and that just did not sit well.
I
But I
figured
knew
it.
I was like onto something, because it made sense. A lot of the questions were around things like, all right, if you start a project, do you complete it, or does like the next shiny project come up and you start working on that? And I'm like, okay, well, if I look around my house, there's a lot of projects here that I haven't completed. Okay, check, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I bought her book, which you have right there. And to sum it up, you can grow grit 2 ways. You can grow it from the inside out. You can grow it from the outside in. Well, you can grow it from the outside in by looking for coaches, mentors, experiences, things of that nature. And I said, that's what I want to do. I want to grow my grit, and I want to do it with an experience. But how? And I thought, okay, what's the hardest thing I could do? What's one of the hardest things I could do? So I went back to good old YouTube, and I typed in the following words: world's toughest civilian training.
Hmm.
And that's when Kokoro Camp popped up, which you had mentioned in my bio. And Kokoro Camp is a camp that's put on by former Navy SEAL commander Mark Devine. And it's modeled after BUDS, which, for
Yep.
those who are listening, if they're not familiar with, BUDS stands for Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL. And it's inside of BUDS, there's a week called Hell Week, which the candidates are up for, I think they're up for 5 or 6 days, maybe 2 hours of sleep. And I thought, how is that even possible? And I started looking at videos and just thinking, holy crap, look at what they're pushing themselves through. And out of like 200 people that sign up, and these are studs, absolute PT studs, right? Out of 200, they might have 30
Yeah.
that make it. And I thought, well, I want some of what they got. And what they have was just that strength in between the ears, man, those 6 inches in between your ears, mental toughness, emotional resiliency. I thought, all right, that's what I need. I need to be I need my system to be shocked, because I just felt at that time I was playing small ball. I was successful by society standards, but I knew internally, like, I could be doing more. I'd gotten too soft. I gotten a little too comfortable.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that, just because I've mentioned, like, during the pandemic, which is like, long story short, the parallel I see in that is kind of like my parents are immigrants. They came to this life to achieve what I currently have. Like, they worked hard for me to go to college. I went to college, got my family, house in the suburbs, don't have to worry about anything. But so I see what you're saying, because to me, it's kind of driving me batty that everything is good. You know,
Right.
I'm not ungrateful. I swear to God, I'm not ungrateful. But now that I've achieved that, what they wanted from me, it's like, okay, now what can I build off from that point? Brad, out of curiosity, what were you doing between up until that point where you came to that realization when you were 34? Like, what kind of work were you into? I always try to get a sense of who someone was when they were younger, that kind of builds them to even think about what they're doing now, or to go and look up grit and passion. What were you
Yep.
doing? What kind of work were you doing that led you to that point where you were looking up passion and grit?
Sure. So, being the oldest of four, I've probably always had a little bit of protector inside of me, just by nature. Always protecting my siblings, those around me, things like that. And as far as work goes, I've been in the sales industry ever since I graduated college, and I've actually had the fortune of, I've worked from home since 2003.
Wow.
So, with the world shutting down and all that, like, that was nothing new to me. I was used
That
to
was
working out of
that
my
was
house.
that was
Dude,
that
I
wasn't
was
even a
ready.
blip on the
Yeah,
radar.
yeah, I could teach classes on that all day long, because that is
Yeah.
a major shift if you're used to going into the office. So, my first role was in the copier industry, which is very cutthroat, capital equipment sales, and I did that for a couple years. Went into the medical industry, which was super cool. Not so cool was I was on call, meaning I wore a pager. Yeah, those things existed. And I had one. It wasn't that long ago, but I was on call, worked for this pacemaker company. I won't name them, but yeah, I would get called into surgeries daily.
Wow.
And what I discovered with that job was money's not everything. Like, did it pay well? Yeah, absolutely did. Did it suck? Yeah, absolutely did. And just wasn't in control of my schedule at all, being on call. And I thought, I can't do this. I cannot do this. So I only lasted about a year and a half, a little less than 2 years. One of the greatest things that ever happened to me, man, was was failing at that job because I was in it for all the wrong reasons. I was chasing money.
Yeah.
It's exactly what I was doing. So that was a really good lesson I learned there, and it totally changed my perspective on sort of like that what's next. So here I am without a job 3 weeks before Christmas, not knowing what the hell I'm going to do. And another chance encounter, right? Ran to a old high school buddy. We were getting our cars. I think we're getting oil changes at Sears, Sears Auto, which doesn't even
Yeah.
exist anymore.
Yeah. Speaking of Sears.
Speaking of Sears, yep. And started talking to him about what he was doing, and he's like, "Man, you'd be perfect for this." And just it's whole networking and opportunity and realizing opportunity when it knocks, and ended up to go work for this publishing company. And man, I was in publishing for 12 years, higher education.
Wow.
It was great. Won all sorts of awards, dude. I mean, rookie of the year, rep of the year, all the accolades, right? But still, man, something was missing. Something was missing, and I found it. I found it at that Kokoro Camp.
So what did you go? I'm curious. What did you go to school for?
So I have a double major in marketing and then operations,
Okay.
distribution management. Yep.
And was that in some way following your dad's footsteps, like the industry that he was in, kind of thing?
I think so.
Okay.
I was still very much undecided on what I wanted to do with my life, and my dad just said, "Hey, if you get a business degree, that's pretty much going to apply to anything. So, why don't you go that route?" And I always liked business. I read the paper, back in the day when there were papers and yeah, all that good stuff. So it fit me, and I'm glad I did it because I think that a lot of the lessons and topics and stuff you discuss in business school apply anywhere.
So then, like the last question I tend to ask in this first part of the episode is, so does from your childhood, looking back at your childhood, does it make sense that you are doing what you're doing now? You had
I think.
mentioned that you're the oldest of four, so that
Mhm.
kind of stands out to me. But is there something from your childhood that says, yeah, I'm exactly where this makes sense based on who I was then, that I would end up in this kind of position doing this kind of work?
Yeah, totally. That's a really good question. You got me going back to how I was in my early years. I mean, I've completely changed mentally, as I'm sure a lot of us maybe have, and for good reason. I mean, I struggled. I had normal struggles. When I said my life was easy, I mean, hey, I grew
Yeah,
up. I got,
no.
I got picked on. I was shy around the girl. All that good stuff. So it
Yeah.
wasn't like super easy, but definitely wasn't hard, man. I thought I knew what hard was until I started getting older and really figuring out, wow, some of these people have some just crazy life experience that I just don't have. And I thought, man, I'm missing out. Like I want that in a strange way. Like I don't want bad things to happen, but here's the thing: they are going to happen. It's not a matter of
Yeah.
if or when. So like, what if you can prepare yourself to handle those situations? Not saying it's going to be easy, but it might be
Yeah.
easier to deal with. So yeah, it's funny looking back. Now I don't think I ever would have told myself, "Hey, you'd be a published author." That's definitely something
Yeah,
new.
I mean that's very specific. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm always curious how people can tie, okay, this is how I was as a kid. It does make sense that I'm in this position now, even if I couldn't predict it.
Yeah, yeah, I could see myself coaching because I was in sports too. I was a baseball player. I played basketball, football, baseball, all that good stuff. So super
And
competitive.
before we jump into the book, I want to ask, what does leadership mean to you, and what is it that makes it so important to you?
Leadership to me is, will people follow you without being required to?
Yeah.
Like, can you inspire? And when I'm, looking to, hire someone or talking to someone in a leadership position who's managing people, I always tell them, hey, don't be looking to hire for that position. Look to hire someone who's going to fill your spot. Because ultimately, I think that's what you want is, yeah, you want someone who can come in and do the job, but I want someone who's going to come in, do the job, but wants to aspire to do more. Maybe wants to take my role one day.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah.
what do you make, just another tangent that I always go on, what do you make of this whole like quiet quitting? That's like the new, I guess, buzzword or phrase that's coming out now. I mean, I think it's been going on for a long time, but now it's kind of at the forefront that people are just kind of tuning out on their job for whatever various reasons. What do you make of that?
So interesting. I hadn't heard the term quiet quitting. So it's people who have a day job and they're just not doing it. They're just doing other things.
Uh, I think you could look at it in different ways
Okay.
where the way I look at it mostly is people just kind of don't put in the effort for whatever
Mm,
reason. They feel their workplace isn't providing to them what they need, so they're like, "F it, I'm just going to do the bare minimum."
yeah.
For me, the biggest danger in that is that if you don't respect the worker, if you don't respect the employee, they kind of their ambition, their fire, their passion, their drive, what they were willing to give to you either burns out and goes away or they take it somewhere else. So for me, it's just kind of, I think the general consensus on the definition is just people doing the bare minimum because they're not getting what they need from that employer.
You know, it's the first time I've heard that term, and I'm digesting it as we speak. I'll give you my first inclination is that a good thing or a bad thing? Depends. I can't answer that. Everybody's situation is different.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
You
I was
know,
just curious if you had heard it and what your take was on it, but
yeah.
yeah,
So I think my take is if you're in if the culture of your company is toxic and you have a legitimate boss or the company that just quote unquote doesn't care about you, I don't have a problem with it at all.
yeah,
Work your bare minimum, do your job, but
yeah,
then
absolutely, absolutely.
what I say is with your free time, follow your passion.
Yeah, I mean
Do what you're here to do.
that's me and you both on that note is kind of like, okay, this workplace isn't taking advantage of what I want to do, what I've
Right.
offered. Okay. I mean, this works for now. I'll just take it somewhere else, build something else. And so for me, it's all about what people do with it. If a company holds you to a low standard by not expecting much of you, not providing you more, they're setting that threshold and
Yeah,
you've tried in some capacity. Okay, meet their low standard, but don't everybody's circumstances are different. Some
they
people
are.
can afford to leave. They have that flexibility. Some people can't. They have maybe a big family they have to support, whatever it may be. Do what you need to do for that job, but that low standard, fine, meet them. Um, but don't undermine yourself. Take that energy, take that fire somewhere else because too many
Yeah.
people just kind of burn out because they have so much energy and we don't channel it and it kind of just it burns out and it goes away. So again, as you had mentioned, the circumstances are different for different people. You can't really cookie cut what the advice would be, but be cognizant of what it is you want out of life and work. Because I mean, like we mentioned before we started recording this, work, school, those are where you're spending most of your day. A third of your
Mhm.
day is going to work or school. If you're spending that much time somewhere, you want to make sure you're getting your ROI out of it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, so I think to sum that up, yeah, it just really depends on the situation, and yeah, you know deep down inside. If you,
Yeah,
I think you like if you're looking at yourself in the mirror, like unless you're gonna lie to yourself, which maybe you do that. I'm not even not you specifically. I'm just saying you
yeah, yeah, yeah.
throughout.
No,
Yeah, I think inside. Again, that voice. Am I skirting this, or should I be doing this? Should I be doing something
yeah. Am
else?
I shortchanging
Am I
myself?
shortchanging myself? Have I thought about what I'm here to do? I mean, that's what I see. Is
Exactly.
I think a lot of people just haven't slowed down to really think about that.
Exactly. They're
They've been
following the script of what a job description is, and they're not really reconciling it to what even if you don't know what that
right.
is for yourself, fucking look for it.
Just go, yeah. Start looking. because it'll happen eventually, and don't
Yeah.
expect it to happen today, tomorrow. Like, it's going to take time. It's going to take time. And some things you just got to try. Like, they look good on paper. And then I've had jobs like that where, this job description looks great. And then you do it and you're like, this is terrible. This
This
is
sucks.
terrible. You know what?
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out.
By lunchtime the first
Yeah.
day you stepped in it.
Oh
All
yeah.
right. Thank you for that. Thank you for that
Absolutely. A
that
great question.
answer. I love that insight. So why don't we jump into your book? Why don't you introduce the book? Give us just a basic overview, and then we can kind of dive into how you structured it and whatnot. But why don't you introduce the book?
Yeah, absolutely. So the book's called School of Grit: Unlock Your Potential Through Purposeful Adversity. And it's about my experience as a child and then growing up, which we basically discussed the highlights of it, and then just this time in my life where I knew I could do more, was searching for how, and the answer to me came at a camp put on by Navy SEALs, which sounds probably a little bit crazy to some of the listeners out there, and it is in its own aspect, but it's what I wanted to do. It's the path that I chose, and I was up for over 50 hours straight without sleep, nonstop mental, physical, emotional training, we'll call it. And just,
And you paid for that.
and I paid for that.
And you paid for that.
Yeah, I paid for, actually, funny enough, the company I worked for paid for it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So going back to, work, when I told you I had won a lot of awards, I worked for a pretty big publishing company. They'd have this national sales meeting once a year. We used to call it prom in the industry because everybody just get dressed up, eat
Yeah.
awesome food. They're spending lots of money. Last night's always awards night. So you recognize those outstanding leaders. They walk on stage in front of everybody, and they usually get some sort of gift, a watch, a golf club, whatever. And I looked at my boss and I said, "Hey, I'm winning. I'm going to be number one next year. And when I do, I don't want this. I want an experience." So I showed her Kokoro Camp was the name of that camp I went to. I said,
Hmm.
"This is where I want you all to send me." So fast forward, I ended up being number one that year and walked across stage, and they presented me with a certificate. So
What did she say when you mentioned the camp? When you showed her what it
I
was all
showed her the
about?
camp, and she thought I was fucking nuts. Like, why would you want to do this? I'm like, why would you not want to do this?
Yeah, yeah,
Actually,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah. It all
Yeah,
depends who's looking at it, you know?
it absolutely does.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what the book's about. Is the camp. So each chapter is going to take you through. They're called evolutions, but essentially it's the task that we were assigned to do. I'm going to take you through that step by step. And then at the end of the chapter, it's going to tell you the lesson that the SEALs were trying to teach us. And I take it a step further and tell you how to apply that to everyday life. Yep.
Can you give us some of those, Brad?
Yeah.
Just give us some examples.
Yeah. The like just the lessons or the whole
Yeah, I
shebang?
mean,
Okay.
not you don't have to go through it in detail, but even just a couple examples. Kind of in that way where this is what it was in camp briefly, and then this is the lesson, and then this is how you can apply it. Even if you give us like two of those just to kind of get a sense of the kind of lessons people can find in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's chock full, but the one that just comes to mind, I mean, there's a couple, but is I have a lesson on asking for help, which we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Because historically, I was very much like Rambo. I get like wanted to be a one man show and self made and blah blah blah
It's
and
that
and
sales mentality, that
yeah,
competitiveness.
absolutely. But I learned that's really horse shit when you get down to it. Like you need a team behind you to support you. And we had this night. It was the second night. There was an evolution where we had to carry a rock. This rock probably weighed 30 or 40 pounds, and we had to carry it the entire night. So sundown to sun up. So you're talking about 8 hours, and you could not let the rock touch the ground. If you did, the whole team paid,
Mm,
the entire team. And there's about 35 of us probably around this time. We started with 50. And I've got like in my mind, it's the biggest, gnarliest rock out of all of them. Cause everybody's eyeing, everybody's comparing rock size. And I'm
yeah.
thinking, oh, I got the biggest one. Come to find out, it actually was. they told me at the end. But that's what I'm telling myself, right?
Now, is
Anyway,
there a reason that you got the heaviest one, or was it just by chance that's the one that ended
I
up in
think
your
it was by
hands?
chance
Okay.
because I was one of the last ones to receive it and no one wanted it.
Okay.
And the reason I was one of the last ones is the way the teams are typically assigned is based on height. So you'll have the first team's the shortest dudes or ladies. There's ladies that do this too. And they call it the Smurf team typically. And then I was on the tallest team. I'm 6'2", and I was the shortest on the team. We were called the
Wow.
Clydesdales. But I was also one of the oldest at 35 at the time. A lot of people that sign up are looking to get into spec ops and stuff like that. So they're on your team, and they called me Gramps. That was my nickname, Gramps,
Yeah.
at 35 because I had a little bit of gray hair back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think they wanted old Gramps to fail at that rock. And anyway, long story short, I'm hallucinating, I'm tripping, I'm falling, but I'm not letting this rock go. And probably about halfway through, we come across a staircase. And this is in California. So if you've ever been to like La Jolla, Encinitas, if you've ever been on the beach there, it's very steep,
Mhm.
very, very steep. And there's staircases all around so that people can come down and surf. And those stairs are very steep. So every staircase we got to, we had to walk up and walk down, which just added insult to injury as we're carrying these huge rocks on our shoulders after being up for 40 hours or whatever already. So before this next staircase, the cadre addresses us and says, all right, I'm going to give you this one chance opportunity. If you feel your rock is too heavy, you can switch out with someone. He's like, but I'm only going to allow this once. And I thought, I'm not going to lie. I didn't think I'd carry it another 10 feet because it's like I said, this thing was gnarly. And I'm looking around and I thought, screw it. Put up my hand and they said, yeah, Ritter, what do you need? And I said, I'd like to swap out my rock, sir. And they said, okay. And I swapped it out with a teammate, got his rock. I swear that thing weighed 50% less and it was smooth and round. And I thought, dude, I could carry this thing forever, and he's struggling with it. So now he's got my big rock and I could just tell like instantly he took that weight. And just body language could tell you it was the oh shit moment, right? And anyway, so my lesson, we ended up carrying our rocks, we didn't drop them. But the lesson there is to your listeners, don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. Don't be afraid to ask for help. People want to help people out, I feel. And a lot of times we just got to stomach our pride, our ego, and not let that get in the way. And ask for help. So one of the ways I apply that is at work is where it shows up a lot. Maybe you've got a project thrown on you at the last second, and you from the get go, like, I don't think I can deliver this on time. Okay, cool, check. What do I need? I need help. All right, I'm gonna find help. I'm gonna ask for help. Swallow that ego, man. Swallow that pride.
Yeah, and I mean, it's definitely a game of numbers too, because I think a lot of people may start off where they're like, okay, I need help, and then they don't get the right help, or someone says no, or someone says yes, and then kind of drops off when they need that help the most, like a phase that they need that help the most. And then I think a lot of people give up after that.
Mm-hmm.
So like with anything else, right, Brad? I think it's a game of numbers where you have to make sure, not giving up when somebody says no, that there are the right people out there. But that game of numbers is about those chance encounters of hitting the lottery with those right people. You're a salesperson. It's about like those no's. Do you stop at that first no, that second no, that third no? I mean, typically it's about going until you get that yes, and it kind of keeps your momentum going. But I think everything is a game of numbers, just finding the right people, not giving up when, at that first negative experience.
Yeah, I mean, sales is not for the weak, that's for sure. I tell people who are looking to get in the industry, do you like hear no a lot? Because that's going to be the most common response you're going to get, if anyone even responds to you. A lot of messages, especially if you're cold calling, just go on deaf ears. So yeah, you're 100%, and then being able to shift fire. Like, don't be afraid to try different ways, try new things, see what works. Maybe it's not a phone call. Maybe it's a video. Maybe it's whatever. So
Yeah.
yep.
Um, what was it like when you started your sales career? Were you one of these people where no kind of bounced off your back, slid off your back, or did it take some getting used to? Was it really hard?
I was scared shitless.
Yeah.
I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to sales, and because I like talking to people, I'm a people person, blah blah blah, and then you get in front of someone finally, and they start asking you some tough questions that might not know the answer to. How do you answer that? Do you lie? Do you say your product does something that it can't?
Yeah.
Do you have the courage to say, you know what, I'm not sure, but let me find out, or I'll find out for you? So yeah, it was scary, man. Hey, it still is scary a little bit sometimes. But you know
Yeah.
what? I like that. I like that discomfort, because I think in discomfort is where you're going to find the most growth.
Yeah.
So there are
It
opportunities,
keeps you aware. I don't know that I would want to be I don't know that I would want the sensation where I feel like I'm fully in control,
right?
because it can create blind spots. Uh People might be turned off by kind of like that ignorance that you might have. So a little bit of fear, a little bit of uncertainty is valuable and just kind of keeps you hungry. It keeps you aware. You don't get complacent. You don't get cocky.
Exactly. Always trying to learn. There's no there. That even if you're quote unquote a master at your craft, like there's still things you can get better at. Absolutely.
Are there a few other examples you can give of the book?
Yeah, absolutely. So the one I just gave you was asking for help, and the probably one of the biggest things that I learned too was at the end. So I secured the camp. I made it through over 50 hours of being up, and pushed beyond anything I ever thought possible. And it's a joyous occasion, right? It's probably one of the happiest I've ever been in my life, next to getting married and having kids. It's,
Hmm.
it's right up there. I dedicated 6 months of my life to train my ass off for it, and a lot of people failed along the way, and I made it through. But I didn't make it alone. It was very much a team effort. But at the end, after the attaboys and the congratulations and all that, we do a debrief, and Mark Devine, who's the founder of the camp, he's addressing the class, and he said two words that haunted me, and he said, "What's next?" And I'm thinking, "What's next? What's he talking about? Like
Yeah.
I just crushed this, man. Like what's next? Can't I just be cool celebrating right now, right?"
Yeah.
And I didn't have an answer. Didn't have an answer. And in fact, it took me um, about a year and a half to really figure that out. Like I said, it haunted me. Those words haunted me. What's next? What's he talking about? And what he meant was, all right, you just had this experience that you trained your butt off for, that you signed up for, that you paid good money for, and every single one of us that made it through, were sort of reborn.
Mhm.
I absolutely felt that, like I was reborn, 2.0 version,
Yeah.
bam, and still believe that to this day. What am I going to do with that gift now? How am I going to approach my life? How's that going to change me? And the way it changed me was, I thought I'd sign up for more physical events and test myself, but what I found was, yeah, I could crush myself, but I wasn't, nothing really met the experience that I had at Kokoro Camp. It fell short a little bit. And it dawned on me that what was missing was a lot of these events that I were signing up for, it was just me. Like I was going through it.
Mhm.
And what I learned at that camp was, there's no way you're going to make it through on your own. It's designed to be done as a team, as a unit. And I just learned the value of serving others. Because before, I would say I was very much about me, and what's good for me, or whoever. But this whole notion of serving others and putting others first before yourself, I'm like, that's different. But you know what?
Yeah.
I like that though. Like it makes me feel better. So I was searching for ways to do that. So that was the lesson there, was service to others. What are you going to do next? And also, there's another piece of that lesson in there too, which is when you're operating at peak performance, so you're as high as you can go, there will be a trough. You're going to drop. Count on it. It happens to everyone. And look at anyone who's gone after whatever, a race, a PhD. They get it. There's a lull, man. You're sort of depressed. It's a depressed feeling. It was the same when I wrote this book. It took me 5 years to go from idea to published in March of this year. And it was great and it was joyous, but I'm not going to lie. There was a period where I was like, shit, what am I going to do now? What's my new mission?
Yeah, I think that's the reason I look at goals differently than I used to.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll have like a general direction, a general goal that I want to work towards. But I've realized that the power, the satisfaction, the ongoing fulfillment, that sensation that kind of sustains is that path to that goal. You know, so whatever this podcast becomes, whatever it gets to, I'm first and foremost enjoying the experience here. I don't know. I don't know when that happened for me, but I just realized that for me, the experience, the everyday, making it count every day is so much better than that goal. And I think it's because of what you just said. I've always had that sensation when I achieve something, it's like, it's over.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
now what? Like, is it
What's
a
next?
new? Yeah. It's.
But it's the path. It's like you said. It's the path. It's the journey. Whatever you want to call it. That's what you gotta be on, and it's different for everyone.
Yeah.
It really is. Yep. So that's my that's the lesson, and then applying that to everyday life is where I go in and I talk about trying to find your passion, trying to find your purpose, your principles. What do you stand for? Who are you? Those are big questions. Those are like the big time philosophical questions that you probably got when you took a philosophy class way back when. And I don't know.
You were just trying to get by and pass the class.
You were trying to get by and pass the class, but now what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how is the book structured? Is it just is it a certain number of chapters, one with each lesson? Do you have the chapters broken out by like the type of lessons that you have in them? Like if somebody opens up the table of contents, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's chronological in order.
Okay.
So it starts with my background. Well, actually starts with Mark Devine actually wrote the foreword, which is super cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, I was stoked about that. So that's how it starts. And then I talk about Angela Duckworth's TED talk and how that helped change my life. And then it's chronological from there. It's here's Kokoro Camp. Here's the events leading up to signing up. And then boom, day one, hour one, and then it goes basically by hour. So each chapter is a different evolution. So it's a different thing that they had us do. And then at the end of each chapter, it's, hey, this is the lesson, and then this is how you can apply that to life.
Awesome. Yep. So what was it that made you pull the trigger on writing the book? You were asked what next.
Mm-hmm.
Where in that process did a book come to mind, and then what made you actually pull the trigger and start writing it?
Yeah, so that's a two-part answer for me on writing the book. The first is it was part of a legacy exercise. So I'm the big proponent of joining whatever you want to call them, like mastermind groups or accountability groups, whatever, right? Surround yourself with like-minded people, tribes, right? We were meant to do life in a tribe, not alone. So anyway, that's a whole nother topic. But someone posed this question to me is like, how do you want to be remembered? What's your legacy going to be to like your family? And I thought, it's a great question. What would they say about me? And this camp came up, and I said, well, I want them to know what all I went through, man, because it completely changed my life. And I want them to know that they're possible of anything they put their minds to. I mean, it sounds cliche, but it's true. Yeah. I fear the person that's committed and going to put literally their life on the line. Like they're going to do it, or die trying.
Yeah.
And that's what I told my wife before I left for that camp, incidentally, which she did not appreciate, but I was so mentally just in it. I was like, you're not going to hear from me unless it's a bad, something bad happened.
Yeah.
Anyway, So that's how the book started. It was literally a legacy exercise for my wife and kids. I wanted to leave something behind for them. And then what it did was it morphed, man. Started talking to friends, started talking to coworkers about it, random people. Hey, I'm writing a book, and they're like, "Holy crap, man! Like, let me know when that drops. I'll read it. That sounds so interesting." And man, it just took off from there. So that was the first part. The second part was, in addition to it being a legacy exercise, the whole like what's next piece and serving others. Man, I had the great fortune of meeting a podcaster whose name's Larry Hagner, and runs a group called the Dad's Edge, and it's all about, as the name would indicate, it's about being a good father,
Mm-hmm.
all that good stuff, which being dads, I'm sure you can relate with.
Yeah.
And I met Larry, actually. He was in Indianapolis. We met for dinner, and he's talking about his podcast, where he wants to go with it. And he was looking at turning into like a membership site where there would be, weekly calls and things like that. And I was like, cool, man, that sounds awesome. And he's like, yeah, he's like, I just need someone who could lead these calls. And I was like, boom, that's me. That's what I've been waiting on. I was waiting for an opportunity to lead and kind of be that first mover. And I didn't even hesitate. I was like, dude, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'd love to do it. I've got so much that I've learned from my experiences. I'd love to help others and teach them. So for about 4.5 years, I was the head coach at the Dad's Edge Alliance, and man, we hopped on Zoom calls every Friday at 10 o'clock Eastern. I used to call my call Fight Club, and guys from, and this is guys only, guys would call in from all over the world, man, and it was amazing. It was amazing to see what the power of this camera could do. Because
Mm-hmm.
what I found was, at least in my experiences, I think there was safety and distance. We'd be on these calls together, and because we weren't all physically in the same room, people weren't that scared to open up, or all it took was one person to really open up
Yeah.
about the divorce they were going through, their addiction to alcohol, whatever. And man, we just poured into it, and it was magical. And that's really what further inspired me to write the book and then start my own membership group called School of Grit, where we basically do similar things, but it's open to men and women, which is awesome. That's what I love doing.
Yeah, there's something to be said about Zoom. Obviously, you've had this experience going back to 2003, I think you said.
Yeah.
My first experience really with using it regularly and remote working was the pandemic, March 2020 to now. Um, but that lesson you talk about, how people open up, how they just kind of divulge what's on their mind, that led to this podcast. When we all went home for 2 weeks in March of 2020, I joined some groups that were talking online, some forums, some
Hmm.
discussions. And as we were talking, obviously, about the elephant in the room, the pandemic, we started talking about development and what you were going to do once we were done with this. And uh, a lot of it was, I said tongue in cheek one time, what are we going to do if this is the closest we're coming to the end of the world? At that point, we didn't know what was what.
No, we didn't.
Um, what are you going to do when we go back out in public, when we're around each other again? Were the things you left on the table? Were the things that you wanted to get to? And it was amazing how many people, not just from that question, but other conversations, opened up because they were, as you said, there was that distance. We weren't in the same room. You felt safe. You were in your own environment, wearing comfortable clothes, not at a networking happy hour in like a monkey suit
Right.
or whatever. Um, so there's just like a lot of comfort because it feels like somebody's coming into my home. I'm not going to an unfamiliar territory. And so I could see how people would open up because I've seen it firsthand. And again, that's what led to this, was just I was curious about the other stories that I could hear from, and I love books, but the stories that I could learn about and ask others to share with me. So you were way ahead of your time yet again, Brad.
Well, part of it's timing. You know what I mean. You can't control that. And man, that's so awesome. You shared that, because what went through my mind was a similar conversation we were having in our groups, and it was, I think I'd posed the question. It was something like, "What are you not going to go back to?" So when all this is over and the
Yep.
world's back, like
What are you going to give up?
what's going to be your new non-negotiable? Because you just discovered what life could be like. when
Yes.
the world shuts down for 2 weeks, and
Yeah.
knowing that you're going to have to go back to some sort of normalcy. Like, what are you going to do differently?
Yeah.
That was interesting. That was really cool to hear.
Yeah, hopefully that vulnerability that people felt during the pandemic, hopefully that's something that sticks around because that vulnerability, I think, can undo a lot of, not all of it, but a lot of like the mental health issues if people are just more open, transparent about who they are, what they need, what they're looking for, how uncertain they feel. I know it has for me. As a father, you're like, okay, I don't know what I can control, what I can't. It's this self imposed pressure, but opening up during the pandemic and dealing with my own mental health issues, it's incredible what just, and people always say, well, it's a two-dimensional view that you have when you're zooming with somebody. But I've opened up more with people on this, people that I don't even know that I hadn't met in person than I had in-person conversation. So it's a blessing in disguise. It's a silver lining of this whole mess that we've been going through.
Yeah, and I don't think it is two-dimensional. I could see where someone would say that, but
Yeah.
I can feel energy.
Yeah.
Like I can feel us talking.
Yeah.
I can, and man, when it goes emotional and someone's sharing something with you that they've never told their spouse, it's like, holy shit, man.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we're in the zone. So
Yeah, I'm with
yeah,
you. I think it's what you're curious about. It's what you bring to the table, how much you pour into it. So
that's it, man.
I'm in that field.
That's what you do. It's what you pour in. It's what you bring. It's, we're all in coaching. I don't care what kind of coaching you're in, but at the end of the day, whoever you're trying to coach, like, they got to do the work. At the end
Yeah.
of the day, you can't do it for them. You can
Yeah.
provide the playbook. You can give them the path. At the end of the day, it's on them, man. They got to do it.
So Brad, I'm always curious with the authors that I interview, what lessons did you take away from writing this book? Some answer about the writing process, some answer about the material that they wrote about. They may see it a different way. But what are how did this change you? How did putting this book out? Um, what was different in you before it was published and after?
Great question. So, writing a book, I would, for one, I would tell anyone who's considering to write a book, do it. And it'll probably be, at least it was for me, it's one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
It just is. Like, it's a grind, man. When you think of a grind, and my process for it wasn't anything special. I woke up early, 5 o'clock, and at the time, no one got up in my house before 6, so I knew I had that golden hour. And I sat down at my kitchen table and I wrote. And I had a
Yeah.
word goal. I was like, I'm gonna get 1,000 words, every morning. But it was a love-hate relationship, man. That only lasted maybe put string a few months together, and then I went months with I didn't write anything. But part of my process was I told so many people I knew they'd held me accountable, so they'd be like, "Hey, Brad, how's that book?" And I'm like, "Oh shit, I
Yeah.
better,
Yeah.
I better get this thing done." So I say that because it took
Yeah.
me 5 years. Some people could probably knock one out within a year, and there's things I think I'd change knowing what I know now as far as the book writing process. I would have hired an editor earlier.
Mhm.
I probably would have started. I probably would have began looking for an editor once I had a rough outline of the book. Because a true editor, and I'm not just talking about copy editing here, I'm talking about content editing, things like that. They're going to
Yeah.
be able to examine an outline or look at some rough stuff and say, okay, yeah, this is great. The middle, it's jacked up, man. You need to get rid of that story, put it somewhere else, or you need to put in some more stuff.
Yeah.
I did it backwards, dude. I wrote the damn thing. It was like 175,000 words, which is just word.
God
Yeah, dude,
damn.
it's great. That's the thing. There's so many stories that aren't even in the book. Which is actually next year. That's what I'm wanting to do. I'm wanting to do an audio version, sort of like,
Okay. Okay.
I don't know if you read David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me at all.
No, I've been meaning to get to that one. I keep
Great,
hearing about it.
great book. I would suggest the audio version. It's
Okay.
it's better than the book because
Oh,
he's
he's a
being
character.
interviewed and he goes into the stories that aren't in the book. And
Yeah.
I was like, dude, that's gold. I want to do that with mine at some point. But anyway,
Jesus, man. I mean, I've drafted. I got like two manuscripts I've been putzing around with. One is 40, one is 60, and people are like, "Oh my god, that's a lot." And here you are with, what'd you
oh, dude,
say?
I had
175.
175,000 words. It was like
Damn.
every little story.
It's like
It's like,
Lord of the Rings,
dude,
dude.
it very much was. So then I hired an editor, and she basically told me the same thing. She's like, "This is way too long." She's like, "Okay, I'm gonna edit this." She's like, "Don't hate me after I give it to you." I'm like, "Okay, whatever." It's like
Yeah.
giving your child to someone, and they give it back and say, "Yeah, it's the ugliest baby ever." And this thing was so redlined. She
Uh-huh.
literally knocked it down to 50,000 words. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm blown away. I'm like, well, "Where's this? Where's that?" So we went through, two or three revisions, and then I finally got to a place where I was like, "This is good enough." Okay,
Yeah.
and I say that word "good enough" because there is no perfect.
Yeah.
You could
Absolutely.
you could always go back and change the way something's worded or whatever, and
Yeah, and then
that's like a metaphor for life, right? Like I
yeah,
just a
because
believer,
something you
like
would change today, in a year from now, you would say, "No, I should have kept that in. This I would have changed." I mean,
yeah,
depending on when you look at it, what mindset you're in, state of mind,
exactly.
yeah, you're right. It's never gonna be perfect.
It's never gonna be perfect. So that's why I say, if it's good enough, if it's 80ish, 90ish% like fire, like
Yeah,
go for it.
yeah.
And that's the same with business, right? Like
Mhm.
doing your podcast. I bet you weren't 100% perfect on
No, not at
everything.
all.
It
Not
was
at
just
all.
like but you felt like you had enough to like, okay, I'm gonna give this a go. Let's go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because if you just sit there and stew and you try to get to perfection, um you're not gonna get there, and then on top of that, if you put something out and you're open enough, humble enough to take feedback, people
Yeah.
can let you know, "Listen, the first couple episodes, this or that needs to be changed. I would suggest this, or it looks good." Or people are like, "No, it's good, it's awesome," and that motivates you. So, but if
Yep.
you're holding it to the chest and not showing anybody your uglyish baby,
Yep.
you're not gonna learn anything. So
You're not gonna learn anything.
it's a
I'm
tough
reminded of
process, but I
it.
appreciate it.
Oh, it's a tough process, and I'm reminded of it's the sayings. You don't have to be you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great.
Yeah, I like that.
It's
Yep.
that adage.
Yes.
Yep. And I have another thought if I can,
Of course.
and I'm gonna read this. I'm
Okay.
gonna read this, and you've got this. So this is Angela Duckworth's book,
Okay.
but I love it because she talks about the book writing process in the end,
Mhm.
and she's talking about somebody named uh, Ta Nahisi Coates. He's a journalist.
Yep. Yes.
Okay.
Writes about race.
Yes. So this is what he said about writing a book. So these are for people who are thinking about writing a book. You just need to know what you're entering because I didn't know this, but this is how it is. At least it was for me. The challenge of writing is to see your horribleness on page, to see your terribleness, and then go to bed and wake up the next day and take that horribleness and that terribleness and refine it and make it not so terrible, not so horrible, and then go to bed again and come the next day and refine it a little bit more, make it not so bad, and then go to bed the next day and do it again and make it maybe average and then one more time. And if you're lucky, maybe you get to good. And if you've done that, then that's a success.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, that's perfect because that's exactly what I kept going through, man.
Yeah, I think
You're beating
that's
yourself up and all that good stuff.
yeah, I think that's what's keeping me back from doing anything is just that I sat down and zoned out and just got in flow. Uh almost like Will Ferrell in Old School, like What Happened, I Blacked Out, where I would sit down and write and
Love
just
it.
go, 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 go. Then you get to the end, you look back, you're like, "Fuck, now I gotta go
Yes.
through all this and clean it up and clean it up and clean it up." So that's where I'm at, but
And
that
and that's where an editor, that'd
yeah,
be my advice, man. Just
yeah.
get that help, right? Ask for help and find someone you can trust.
And it's good to hear Coates's, breakdown of what that process looks like
Mhm.
because we just always see the finished gems, we don't see the ugly work that goes into it. I mean, I'm always curious what those first drafts look like, even for people like we admire, like, the legends of writing, like Stephen King or whoever you may look up
Absolutely.
to. What did their stuff look like before somebody, like you said, as an editor, guided them, cut it back, cut it in half? For you, cut it in, I don't know,
A
a
third.
fourth, a third,
A
something like
third.
that. Yeah.
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 And that's a question I love to ask people is just like because you see the finished project, you don't know the blood, sweat, and tears that went on, the failures. But I always like to ask people like how'd they start, what it looked like,
Yeah.
and yeah, going back to my buddy that runs that podcast. I can't remember what he's done. I think I did a Stalvin show or something crazy, but he's like, dude, I can't even listen to the first 100 I did because I
Yeah.
was so terrible,
Yeah.
but you're refining, you're working on that craft.
Yeah. I think one of the first examples I remember of that kind of process was somebody I was watching on YouTube when I was really into photography. And when I caught up with him where he was watching his stuff, very polished, very edited, very confident, this and that. Um, and then one of the episodes that he showed was, and now I'm going to show you my first episode.
Mm,
The lighting was poor. He was talking in a monotone voice. He was just kind of sitting down with like the camera equipment in front of him. Like it was like a dark and dingy basement. Um, Complete opposite of what you saw just in a couple years, maybe, a couple hundred episodes of his show. But yeah, I mean, going back to who we were, it can be tricky. Hell, I don't even like listening to these because I don't like hearing my own voice.
right.
You know what I
I'm the
mean?
same
If
way.
if there's somebody out there that's not listening to this podcast, it's me because I don't like listening to my own voice. I think a lot of people are like that, but
Yeah.
um, no, that's another great example. Thank you for bringing that up. Just the difference time can make, and if you're committed, that it doesn't always start off polished.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, Brad, now that we're talking about writing in that process, what do you think would be? And I know obviously I've said this to other people. I know this book just came out, but what do you think would be on the radar for your writing in the future? What kind of areas would you want to hit? Have you thought that far ahead or
You must, and we did not have this discussion beforehand, but you hit on something. I've been asked that a lot since this book came out, and I've told someone, hey, I don't, maybe some at some point. I don't know what that is right now, but something's calling me right now to do something related to kids and teaching kids grit and or mental toughness. It's no doubt because I have my own,
yeah,
and I try traditionally. I mean, I work with adults in my
yeah.
coaching, but like, what better class, let's say, or genre of people to reach than kids, man. Like the
Yeah,
next generation, man. Those are the folks that are going to be taking care of us. And I don't know. I think there's something there. I don't know what it's going to look like, but
yeah,
I love trying to be a dad, obviously, and coach my own kids. But I also enjoy the opportunity to work with other kids too. Like I'm fortunate. I have a gym in my garage, and there's a neighborhood kid that lives across from us, man. And he knows when those blinds go up, like it's on, man. I'm throwing down in the garage, and he rides his bike over, and he's like, "Hey, man, can I work out with you?" I'm like, "Dude, absolutely," because it gives me an opportunity
yeah.
to teach him, and it's a two-way street. So yeah, I
Yeah,
think
and I'm
something kid related.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was meaning to ask that. I find that question coming up a lot of the authors that I have on here is the work that you're doing in your coaching. Most of them are coaches. Um, the work that you're doing, what you're writing to adults, have you thought about translating that in some
Hmm.
fashion to kids?
Hmm.
Because I think anything where we want to work on us ourselves as adults, it's kind of like you have to have a two-pronged approach. Working with adults to kind of deprogram the way we've been programmed in whatever way that may be, and then at the same time translating those lessons, putting it into a certain vernacular for the younger generation so that it's not that they're going to get it perfect, but it gives them tools to kind of sort through the bullshit that maybe we had to tackle. I think everybody needs a little bullshit in their life to kind of get where they're supposed to be, but
Yeah.
at least tools to not feel as frustrated or down as maybe some of us may have felt in trying to get up that hill of whatever success we're trying to get to.
Oh yeah, and I'm a huge proponent, obviously, of chasing purposeful adversity. So that's going to be another component. Like I want to put kids into pressure situations in a controlled environment, and that's how they're going to learn. It's one thing to be in a classroom, read something. It's another to actually apply it.
Yeah.
Right then and there, and then get feedback. Right, that's deliberate practice, and that's how you get better.
Brad, so if you could sum up this book to somebody with the highlights or a message to kind of get them to look at it, to read it, to take it in, absorb it, no matter what industry they're in, because it's so general, it can apply to anything. What would you say to somebody about your book to draw them in and show them that these lessons are important for them to take on?
Yeah, I think I kind of sum that up with the subtitle: unlock your purpose through or your potential through purposeful adversity. And I going along with that, grit has many definitions. grit's one of those things that, it's been around forever,
Yeah.
and there's lots of different. If you ask someone, hey, what does grit mean? You'd probably get 10,000 different answers if you're interviewing 10,000 different people, and it's just super interesting because you kind of know yourself whether you think you have it or you don't, and if you do or don't, it's worth looking at. But I've come across this. My definition of grit, and this has evolved over time, is uncommon perseverance in the face of adversity, backed by a strong why to achieve a worthy goal.
Hmm.
And there's 4 parts there. So uncommon perseverance, we've talked a lot about, right? Mental toughness, emotional resiliency. We talked about adversity, because I believe that's when you're going to realize if you have it or not, is when you start to hit those speed bumps, when you hit that wall, when things aren't as sunny or aren't like they were supposed to be. Backed by a strong why. I see Simon Sinek's book right behind you. I think he wrote the book
Yep.
Why. Awesome book if you haven't read it. Ask yourself why 3 to 5 times. Usually gets you to the root of why you're doing anything. And then to achieve a worthy goal. Hey, not all goals are created equal. And guess what, y'all? We got to get better at saying no to stuff,
Yeah.
because it doesn't fit. It's not aligned with our mission. It's not aligned with our purpose. So it's okay to say no. Or maybe maybe you want to do it, just the timing's off. So
Yeah.
say no, and we'll do that later. So I think that's what I'd leave them with.
Yeah, I like that last part where the goal may not be what the goal is supposed to be. You may be influenced by what someone else's goal, someone else's definition of success is, but I think we're not really good at figuring out what we're here for. And I love that, obviously the nature of your work is to get people to open their eyes to thinking about that, working in that direction, not getting it perfect, but at least considering and asking themselves. So I appreciate that.
Oh, you're very welcome, man.
And then
Appreciate it.
just in wrapping up, is there anything you want to share? Anything about what you're up to these days? Anything at all?
Yeah, actually, 2 things. So at School of Grit, we believe in going after crucible experiences and bringing that to ourselves to help test us, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. So we're actually launching our first crucible style event. It's going to occur October 1st, and it's a 24-hour event. We're calling it the Long Walk.
Oof.
The idea is pretty easy, but I can assure you it's not. So you're going to walk for 24 hours. Every hour on the hour, you're going to walk for 50 minutes and then take a break for 10 minutes. So you're going to do that 24 hours in a row. So come join us. I've got a link I can send you to, by the way. So
Absolutely.
we're
Yeah,
going
I'll
to have a
share
lot of
that.
fun. It's free.
Where's it going
Get
to
your
take place?
When did you say?
Where?
Oh, where? Your backyard.
Okay.
So yeah,
Okay.
just follow along. Get your friends, get your family, get your local community behind you, and yeah, come join us.
Awesome.
October
Yeah, I'd
1st.
love to share that.
Yeah, awesome. I'll send you the link. And then other than
Perfect.
that, if you go to schoolofgrit.org, so it's .org, not .com. I don't own
Mhm.
the .com, and I didn't want to pay for it. So schoolofgrit.org, you'll have all my contact information and stuff like that there. But we're looking at growing our membership tribe specifically. So if you want to learn more, just reach out, and we don't just let anyone in. So we'll see if you've
Yeah.
got what it takes.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to have that. Again, something you're not going to get perfect, but it has to be there. Is like you really have to show that you're serious and curious, like meeting whoever is coaching you part of the way.
Hmm.
Um, so I love that you point that out, that it's not just going to be anybody let in, but you have to have a certain level of commitment just to kind of even just get in the door.
Yep.
All right, Brad. Thank you for sitting down with me on this conversation on your book, School of Grit: Unlock Your Potential Through Purposeful Adversity. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, John. Appreciate you, brother.
And if there's anything that I might have missed, we're limited on time, even though we went close to like an hour and 20 minutes or whatever it may be. Let me know. Reach out to me, reach out on my social, or I'll reach out to Brad just to see if he can answer any questions that anybody's curious about. But in the meantime, thank you for watching and listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.